You're in the grocery store, standing in front of the chocolate shelf. Some bars look fancy, some are pricey, and some feel like they're trying hard to impress you. And then you see Hershey. It's familiar, it's everywhere. It's usually the cheapest option. So without thinking too much, you reach for it. Safe choice. Easy choice. But here's the quiet question. How did chocolate ever become this ordinary? Because for most of its history, chocolate wasn't ordinary. It was a luxury hard to make, hard to keep consistent, and too expensive for most families. So why is Hershey so cheap? The surprising answer isn't cheap cacao. It's milk, how to keep it from spoiling, how to keep it from burning, and how to make it behave the same way every single time. Solve that, and you don't just change candy, you can build an entire town. Let's get into it right here on Secrets of Simple Things. Founder's backstory. The shelf life mindset. Quick question, what does Hershey even mean? It's not a flavor. It's not a type of chocolate. It's a last name, the last name of the man who built the company. The candy bar is called Hershey because Milton Hershey put his own name on it. And Milton Hershey wasn't born into comfort or confidence. He grew up on small farms in Pennsylvania, in a family that never seemed to catch a break. By the time he was a young man, he had already tried to run candy shops that didn't work out. More than once, he ended up broke and embarrassed, with people around him quietly deciding he just wasn't that kind of person. That matters, because this story isn't really about talent or luck. It's about what failure teaches you to care about. When Hershey went west, he worked in candy stores that made caramels in a very different way. Instead of shortcuts that helped candy last on a counter for a day, they used fresh milk, real vanilla, and careful heat. The result was a caramel that stayed soft, tasted better, and most important, could survive shipping. It held up. It didn't fall apart the moment it left the kitchen. Hershey noticed. He practiced the method until he could repeat it not once, but every time. Here's the key idea. Hershey didn't win because he had the most creative recipe. He won because he chased something harder, making the same taste every day, at scale. And once you start thinking like that, chocolate stops being just a treat. It becomes a manufacturing problem. Luxury, not because it's fancy. When we hear the word luxury, we usually think of something fancy, something saved for special occasions. But for a long time, chocolate was luxury for a simpler reason. It was hard to make the same way twice. Chocolate is picky. The flavor and texture depend on how the cacao is handled, how fine the sugar is, how long everything is mixed, and exactly how heat is used. Make a small batch by hand, and you can babysit it. You can adjust as you go, but try to make it by the ton, day after day, and every little difference starts to show up in the final bar. One batch comes out smooth, the next one tastes dull, another one feels grainy on your tongue. That inconsistency is expensive because stores and customers don't forgive it for long. And milk chocolate makes the problem worse. Milk is delicate. So chocolate wasn't costly because it was glamorous. It was costly because it was difficult to standardize. And that leads to the real question. What finally turned this fragile, difficult product into something cheap and dependable? The machine that made chocolate repeatable. Around the end of the 1800s, Hershey visited a big World's Fair in Chicago. These fairs were like a peek into the future: electric lights, new engines, machines that looked almost magical. And in the middle of all that, he saw something that changed his thinking: chocolate-making equipment from Europe that could roll and refine chocolate in a controlled, repeatable way. That sounds technical, but the idea is simple. When chocolate is rough, you feel it. Sugar crystals can be too big. Cocoa particles can be uneven. One bite feels smooth, the next feels sandy. In small batches, a skilled candy maker can work around that. In a factory, You can't work around it. You need the process to do the same thing every time for every batch. Rolling and refining machines helped solve that. They squeezed and worked the chocolate until it became consistently fine, fine enough that your tongue stops noticing individual grains. Not because it's more romantic or artisanal, but because it's reliable. And reliability is what makes a product scalable. If your chocolate comes out the same on Monday and Friday, the store can trust it. The customer can trust it. And once trust enters the picture, you can start making more of it, shipping more of it, and pricing it lower because you're wasting less. In other words, machines didn't just speed up chocolate, they made it repeatable. But here's the catch. The machines only solved half the problem. They could smooth out chocolate. They couldn't tame the most fragile ingredient in milk chocolate, and that ingredient was milk. Milk, the ingredient that refused to behave. Milk chocolate sounds simple on paper. Cacao, sugar, milk, that's it. But milk is not a quiet ingredient. Milk spoils, milk burns. Milk changes character the moment heat gets involved. And when you're trying to make thousands of bars a day, almost right is not good enough. In a small kitchen, you can watch the pot. You can stir. You can lower the heat the second you smell trouble. In a factory, you don't have that luxury. You need a method that can hold steady hour after hour without drifting. Because when milk goes wrong, it doesn't go wrong politely. If the heat runs a little high, you get scorching a burnt taste that ruins the whole batch. If the milk sits too long, you can get off flavors. If you can't control moisture and timing, shelf life becomes a gamble. One shipment arrives fine, another arrives with a taste that makes people hesitate. And hesitation is deadly for a cheap product. A 5-cent candy bar has no room for surprises. So the real problem of milk chocolate wasn't cacao. It was the milk. Hershey and his team struggled with this for years. They could make chocolate. They could even sell chocolate. But making milk chocolate at scale, making it consistent, stable, and affordable, was a different level of difficulty. Then the breakthrough came from a practical idea, not a glamorous one. The answer wasn't, make the milk fresher. The answer was, make the milk safer. They learned how to heat and handle milk in a way that didn't scorch it, and how to reduce the water in it, often by using condensed milk so it wouldn't spoil as easily and could travel farther. Less water meant less risk. Careful heat meant fewer ruined batches. And once the milk behaved, everything else could finally fall into place. This is the quiet magic of industrial food. It's not about inventing a new flavor. It's about removing the reasons a product fails. And it may even leave a fingerprint on the taste. Many people notice that classic Hershey's milk chocolate has a slightly tangy note compared with many European bars. That isn't necessarily better or worse. It's a reminder that flavor can be the shadow of a process, the taste of a method designed for stability, storage, and mass production. Here's the second reveal. Once you solve milk, you don't just make chocolate. You make chocolate that can be priced for everybody. And when something becomes stable and repeatable, the next steps are almost automatic. The price drops, distribution spreads, and a luxury turns into a habit. From luxury to 5 cents everywhere. Once the process became steady, the price could finally fall. A 5-cent candy bar only works when the risk is low. You can't sell something that cheap if half your batches burn, spoil, or taste different from week to week. Cheap doesn't come from cutting corners. It comes from consistency, making the same bar again and again, wasting less, and shipping it without fear. That's what Hershey figured out. When milk stopped being a gamble, chocolate could be treated like a dependable product instead of a fragile treat. And once it became dependable, it could be made in huge quantities. That's when chocolate changed its role in everyday life. It stopped being something you found only in specialty shops or city candy stores. It started showing up everywhere: general stores, train stations, small-town counters, and eventually every supermarket shelf. It became the default choice, the one you grab without thinking, because you already know what it will taste like. And this is what candy becomes infrastructure really means. When a product is cheap enough and stable enough, it slides into the system around it. It fits into shipping routes. It fits into advertising. It becomes a standard gift, a holiday habit, a little comfort people can count on. Not because it's rare, but because it's reliable. But here's the strangest part. A cheap candy bar didn't just build a brand. It built a place. A candy bar that built a town. As Hershey's chocolate business grew, something unusual happened. Instead of building only a factory, Milton Hershey began building a community around it. He bought farmland and planned an entire town for the people who worked in his factory. Not a rough camp of temporary buildings, but a real place with paved streets and solid homes. A town with schools, a hospital, churches, and parks. A place where workers could live close by, raise families, and have access to things that many small towns at the time didn't have. This wasn't just generosity. It was also practical. If your factory depends on skilled people showing up every day, you can't treat them like replaceable parts. You need stability, just like you need stability in the product. A steady workforce makes steady output. But the deeper legacy went beyond the town. Milton and his wife, Catherine, didn't have children, so they took their wealth and put it into a school for boys who had very little children who had lost parents or had nowhere safe to go. Over time, Hershey transferred much of his fortune into that school, so it could keep running long after he was gone. So, yes, you can still buy a Hershey bar for a low price today. But the real twist is this. Sometimes, you're not just buying chocolate. You're buying the system behind it, industry, distribution, and a piece of a town built from candy. So the next time you're in that grocery aisle and you reach for a Hershey bar, the question doesn't have to be, is it the best chocolate? A better question is, what kind of life does it take to make something this ordinary? Because this story isn't only about a brand, it's about a person who learned the hard way that success isn't one perfect idea. It's the patient work of making things steadier, one batch, one day, one setback at a time. That's what Hershey kept chasing, not just taste, but reliability, not just a product, but a process. And once he could make something consistent, he could make it affordable, and once it was affordable, it could become part of people's lives. Maybe that's the quiet lesson here. Most of the big changes we live with every day don't come from a miracle. They come from someone refusing to quit and choosing to build something that lasts. If you enjoy quiet stories like this, hidden inside everyday things, subscribe to Secrets of Simple Things. New videos every day.